Sorry, and we'll put this live because I'm trying to work out how to introduce you, Instigator, Innie.
Yeah.
To call you an espresso guru, which is what I did on our run sheet today, is kind of underselling your skills, I think.
Yeah, I think over the years, one of the enduring interests I've had is also how business works. Mm-hmm. It's not just espresso, so I enjoy hearing about success stories in business.
So how do you get engaged with that? Where to feed that hunger to hear about good businesses? What do you?
Well, I think we're really fortunate to live in a country where we have had an extraordinary amount of freedom to be able to start ventures and to take a risk, and if you've got an idea, to turn it into reality. And I think that's all I've done over the last 30 years. And I think that all the great success stories are simply that. It's someone taking an idea and using their imagination and then turning it into a physical reality.
Well, let's talk about that path. It started with Danes, did it? Danes Coffee?
Well, originally, I worked with my brother at Forsyth Coffee and Tea for about 5 years, and then I got Danes going in about 1985, and I was managing director as a 27-year-old. And I ran that for the next 14 or 15 years and built it up into a nice little roasting wholesale
great
business.
Coffee I enjoyed down at Warunga when I was there.
Yeah, I set up that store. That was an interesting little project, that one. I took it over from a couple of old ladies who were very run down and very tired, and just some really simple changes that were really inexpensive, very, very low cost fit out. And
then being a managing director at 27, you moved on to another little coffee.
Yeah, I had a bit of a dilemma. I had to walk away from Danes, which is my little baby. I started off on my own, and then I gradually built up a team of people around me, business partners and other workers and good workers.
At that point, I'm kind of on my rant now. You realised that it was an investment, I'm presuming, and you said, okay, well, if you're going to reap the benefits of that investment, you've got to move on. Was it that structured, or?
I wasn't thinking about it more on the benefit side. I was thinking more on the challenge side. So I was thinking like, well, if I had to set up a new business, I'm starting from scratch again. But I saw the opportunity of setting up the Michelle's Espresso business, which is a roasting business, as more of a national platform, whereas Danes was really more of a Sydney-based, at the time, it's more a suburban kind of roaster. And what I didn't appreciate at the time when I set up that national structure and that national business, that would actually catapult me into an international framework, and seeing how the coffee world then worked globally, and ultimately becoming executive director of the World Barista Championship, which did give me a global view of what's going on, and that was really exhilarating, challenging.
Alan and the have there been other global, worldwide barista champions? From Australia?
No. Oh, and in different categories.
Right.
The main one is the Barista Championship. They have also had the latte art one, where they're doing the fancy artwork, and then there's now coffee tasting ones and coffee and alcohol ones. So I've worked with Mitch Faulkner, who's the young Australian champion for the last 2 years in the coffee cocktail category, and he's a great young guy from the Central Coast, and who's really applied himself well. And he's
talking about alcohol and opportunities. You're working with another Central Coast opportunity with St. Friarca.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting little opportunity. Yeah, I met the guy there, and he said he's looking at doing a coffee-based liqueur, and so I just gave him a few tips on what I thought could work, and so I've actually already put in an order for a couple of they're special cold brewers, so it makes a much smoother coffee, and I think for him it would be ideal to create a really super smooth coffee liqueur.
If you've got advice, because you've started and moved on from more businesses than I have, if you're sitting with an entrepreneur or a business owner, there are some points of courage they have to have in developing their business. So can you identify any of those?
Yeah, it's kind of an ironical. You need to have a lot of courage, because it's risky and it can be scary, because you're getting out of your comfort zone. But at the same time, it's a little bit egotistical too. So but I think that you can never let your ego run away with you. You have to always be humble and open to learning from everybody around you and learning from your experiences. So, you know, one of the successes with the Danes business was that I never ever accepted that my coffee was good enough, and if I have ever heard or saw or tasted anything that I thought was remotely better, I would be there like a rat up a drain pipe, checking it out and trying to figure out what I could learn and what I could improve. So I think it's that desire to learn and improve what you're doing the whole time keeps it interesting and keeps you energised, and once you get used to that process, then the risks aren't quite so scary.
So what's the next 12 months look like for you?
It's really interesting. I think in the financial market globally is extremely volatile. I can see that. I follow coffee commodities. Mm-hmm. So I watch on the news.
There's no shock there.
No, it's my home turf, so I'm comfortable with it. I don't follow gold or pork bellies or orange juice, but I do follow coffee.
Well, it is the second most traded
commodity in the
world.
Yeah. And one of the theoretically the world's biggest employer of individuals. But so I think that it's looking at a coffee graph. I've never seen anything like it in 30 years, where it's actually like a gyroscope and there's a huge earthquake underway. It's just like enormous variations and that's not supply demand based. That's actually financial markets just sloshing trillions of dollars in and out of, getting the commodities into the American dollar, out of the American dollar into the equities, back and around. So I think that there's very, very troublesome times up ahead. And I think there's some things you can do to, protect yourself against those sort of things, or even, and also to turn them into opportunities.
And well, let's steal some of those now.
Well, the first thing is, in the next 12 months, I'm actually, it's not for the faint-hearted, but I'm going to just trade coffee futures because that's something that I know. I think that that's one investment strategy that I'm going to use. Well, it's more of a gambling strategy, I think, rather than investment strategy. But
don't put everything into
it.
No, you don't. But you've got to put enough into it too.
It's got to be money you can afford to lose.
I suspect, Annie, that you may be the only coffee futures trader on the Central Coast.
You never know.
You never know. We may start an association now.
Yeah, so. I think by default there's a lot of people in superannuation funds without even knowing it actually are. Oh. They'll have a basket of commodities, not just coffee. But so I think that's a factor. I think the other thing is that what happened in the global financial crisis was that coffee was actually very resilient, and coffee consumption actually didn't go down. What did happen was that people changed their habits. So rather than drinking out of home, they would drink it at home. But they go out and buy a really nice coffee beans, so they give themselves a little treat for 40 or 50 cents a cup at home. So coffee's actually a really for hard times is actually a really good product to be involved with.
Yeah, excellent. A rant? Do you have one? Well, before do you have one on business or?
Look, I'm going to be really blunt.
Please, as long as it's not insulting.
We need to change this federal government. This is disastrous what they're doing to the economy, and what I think is really the hard part about it is that it's the engine room for employment, for prosperity, is actually small business. As we all know, that's who employs the majority of workers around the country. And I don't think that the current decision makers there have any small business experience for a starter. And they come from the end of town where it's all big business and big unions, and it's the small guy doesn't really get a look in. And I've come up against that a couple of times, and it's for small business guys, it's absolutely vital that for the economy and for the well-being of our nation that they are listened to and they are considered, and there's policies that get rid of red tape and that actually free people up to actually create jobs and generate livings for themselves.
Actually, you've led me into one of my rants, which is a part of small business, and we depend heavily on it in Australia, is the franchising sector. What sort of shape is that in at the moment when you look at it?
Yeah, look, it seems there's a lot of new Australians that are buying their way into immigration using a lot of franchise chains, from what I can see. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's new lifeblood, it's new capital that's coming to the country, and they are actually working, so it's not like they're phantom jobs. That seems to be one key driver that's underpinning it to some extent. And look, it's when a franchise system works at its best, it's actually it's symbiotic. It's mutually beneficial. It's got to work for the franchisees just as much as the franchisor, And when it works evenly and fairly like that, it can actually be a very good business model. It's hard with, given human nature, for that balance to always be present. And I think that's where a lot of friction comes in. I'm a little bit removed from it because I'm just sort of a supplier supplying them now, whereas before I was much closer to the coalface.
I think you, and we might finish there, I think you are incredibly close to it. I love the analogy of the symbiotic relationship, and there are very few, let me do an unsubstantiated research of one now. There aren't many in Australia that embrace that symbiotic relationship. We can cut that out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.